Deep in the shadowy heart of the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, where twisted trees claw at the sky and the wind carries whispers of the unknown, something lurks. For centuries, locals have told stories, hushed, fearful accounts of a creature unlike anything else, a beast with leathery wings, glowing red eyes, and a scream that chills the blood. They call it the Jersey Devil, and its legend is woven into the very fabric of this eerie landscape. Imagine standing alone in those woods at night, hearing a rustle in the underbrush, a sound that doesn't belong. Your pulse races. Is it just the wind or something else? This isn't just campfire gossip. The Jersey Devil story stretches back over 300 years, with sightings, encounters, and even official reports adding layers to its mystery. From colonial era farmers who swore their livestock was torn apart by an unseen terror, to modern-day hikers who vanish without a trace, only to reappear days later, babbling about a winged monstrosity. What could explain these chilling accounts? Is it a misidentified animal, a hoax that spiraled out of control, or something far older and darker? Tonight, we're diving into the depths of this enduring legend. We'll sift through history, separating fact from folklore, and explore the theories that have kept this cryptid alive in the imaginations of countless people. From Native American tales warning of a vengeful spirit to bizarre 18th century birth records that hint at something unholy, the Jersey Devil's origins are as murky as the swamps it's said to haunt. By the end of this journey, you'll decide for yourself, is it merely a myth, or could there be a terrifying truth waiting in the pines? Long before European settlers set foot in the Pine Barrens, the Lenape people spoke of a dark presence lurking among the trees. They called it Messingwa, a forest spirit with the power to bring both sickness and protection. Some tribal stories describe it as a twisted fusion of man and beast, watching from the shadows with fiery eyes, a warning to those who trespassed on sacred ground. These tales weren't just scary stories, they were deeply rooted in the Lenape's respect for nature's unseen forces, a reminder that some things in the wilderness were not meant to be disturbed. When the first colonists arrived in the 17th century, they brought their own superstitions, blending them with the Lenape's warnings. The isolated swamps and dense forests already felt haunted to settlers, and whispers of the Leeds Devil began circulating, a cursed creature born from human sin. One persistent legend claims it all started with a woman named Mother Leeds, pregnant with her 13th child in the early 1700s. As the story goes, she cursed the unborn baby in a moment of despair, and when it was born, it transformed into a monstrous, winged thing that escaped up the chimney and into the night. But here's where history gets murky. No concrete records of Mother Leeds exist, and the earliest written accounts of her story didn't appear until over a century later. So was this tale a colonial spin on the Lenape's Messingwa? A way to explain strange noises in the woods or livestock killings? Or did something far stranger happen in those early years, something that left even the most skeptical settlers glancing over their shoulders? By the time newspapers began printing sightings in the 1800s, the Jersey Devil had already cemented itself as more than folklore. It had become a living nightmare, stalking the marshes with a legacy as tangled as the vines of the Pine Barrens themselves. The tale of Mother Leeds is one of those stories that clings to a place, sinking its claws into history until it's impossible to separate fact from fear. According to the most widespread version, she was a poor woman living in the Pine Barrens in the early 1700s, already burdened with 12 children when she discovered she was pregnant once more. Some say she was a witch, others claim she was simply a desperate woman pushed to the edge. In her darkest moment, as labor pains gripped her, she allegedly cursed the child in her womb, screaming that she wished this one would be a devil. And when the baby came, the stories describe a birth straight out of a nightmare. the child transforming before the midwife's eyes, sprouting bat-like wings, cloven hooves, and a serpent's tail before letting out an unearthly shriek and bursting through the chimney into the night. But here's the thing, legends like this rarely have just one version. In some retellings, the Leeds family wasn't poor at all, but wealthy landowners who angered the local community, making them perfect targets for supernatural gossip. Other variations suggest the curse wasn't Mother Leeds doing at all, but the result of a deal gone wrong, perhaps a pact with dark forces that backfired horribly. Then there's the matter of the 13th child itself. Some accounts claim it wasn't even human to begin with, but something far older wearing the skin of a newborn, waiting for the right moment to escape into the wild. What makes the Leeds family curse so enduring isn't just the horror of the tale, but how it reflects the anxieties of its time. The early 18th century was an era of superstition and religious fervor, where unexplained illnesses, crop failures, and animal deaths were often blamed on the supernatural. A cursed child born of a woman's despair, that wasn't just a scary story, it was a cautionary tale about sin, punishment, and the dangers of the unknown. And with each retelling, the legend grew, twisting into something bigger, darker, until the name Leeds Devil became shorthand for every strange sound in the night, every missing goat, every shadow that moved just wrong. Yet for all the variations, one detail remains eerily consistent: the idea that this creature wasn't just born, it was unleashed. Whether by curse, witchcraft, or something worse, the Jersey Devil didn't stumble into existence by accident. It was created, then set loose upon the land, as if the Pine Barrens themselves had been waiting for something to fill the silence with its screams. And if that's true, the real question isn't just what it is, but whether it was ever meant to be found at all. The first documented encounters with the Jersey Devil read like pages torn from a horror novel. In the 1700s, farmers along the edges of the Pine Barrens began reporting livestock torn apart under circumstances that defied explanation. Not the neat kills of wolves or bears. These were brutal, almost ritualistic mutilations, with animals drained of blood or left arranged in unnatural patterns. What truly unsettled the communities, though, were the sounds that accompanied these attacks, unholy screeches that echoed through the mist, unlike any bird or beast known to the region. One chilling account from 1792 describes a Burlington County hunt party tracking what they thought was a rogue panther after it slaughtered 6 sheep in a single night. Armed with muskets and torches, they followed the creature's tracks deep into the marshes, only for the trail to vanish at the base of a gnarled oak. That's when they heard it, a guttural, laughter-like cry from the branches above. When they looked up, the torches revealed eyes glowing like embers in the darkness, and something leathery unfolded from the tree before vanishing into the fog. The men returned to town pale and trembling, refusing to speak of what they'd seen for years. By the early 1800s, the legend had seeped into newspapers. A particularly vivid clipping from the Philadelphia Post in 1809 recounts a stagecoach driver's encounter near the Leeds Point Junction. He swore his horses reared in terror at the sight of a winged imp blocking the road, its body knotted like a man's yet bent like a beast. Passengers corroborated his story, describing how the creature let out a shriek that sent birds scattering from the trees before it took flight, silhouetted against the moon. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from personal diaries, where the fear feels visceral. A Quaker woman's journal from 1831 recounts weeks of sleepless nights in her isolated farmhouse, plagued by scratching at the walls and a stench like rotten eggs and wet fur. She wrote of finding 3-toed tracks in the frost around her well each morning, and how her neighbors dismissed her until their own cattle began disappearing. These weren't just sightings, they were patterns, a ripple of dread spreading through the decades. What ties these accounts together isn't just the descriptions of the creature, but the aftermath. Families moved away, land went untended, and in quiet corners of taverns and churchyards, people began whispering the same question. If this was just superstition, why did the stories match across generations? Why did the fear feel so specific? The Jersey Devil wasn't just a story by then. It was a shadow living in the pauses between their words, as real as the cold sweat on their backs when the pines began to rustle with no wind. Even royalty wasn't spared from the terror of the Pine Barrens. Joseph Bonaparte, the older brother of Napoleon and former King of Spain, found himself in exile in Bordentown, New Jersey, after his brother's empire crumbled. Far from the palaces of Europe, he settled into a quiet life, until an evening in 1820 when his diary records an encounter that shook him to his core. According to his own words, he was walking the grounds of his estate at dusk when a rustling in the underbrush drew his attention. At first, he assumed it was a deer until the thing emerged. He described it as a creature of nightmare, standing upright like a man but covered in dark, matted fur, with wings folded against its back and eyes that glowed like hot coals. It let out a piercing scream before vanishing into the trees, leaving Bonaparte frozen in place, his heart pounding. Now, here's why this account stands out. Joseph Bonaparte wasn't some superstitious farmer. He was an educated man, a world traveler who'd seen the courts of Europe and the battlefields of war. His diaries, meticulously kept, were more likely to detail political musings or architectural sketches than wild fantasies. Yet the entry detailing this encounter is riddled with uncharacteristic agitation, the handwriting shaky in places as if penned in haste. He even reportedly consulted local physicians afterward, convinced he'd suffered some sort of delirium, only to be told others in the area had seen her and heard similar things. Skeptics argue Bonaparte's sighting could have been a misidentified bear or large owl, creatures known to roam the region. But bears don't stand upright for long, and owls don't scream like a woman in torment. Others suggest the stress of exile might have played tricks on his mind, yet his writings from that period show no other signs of paranoia or instability. If anything, he seemed fascinated by the encounter, later inquiring with neighbors about local legends and even jotting down comparisons to European folklore about winged demons. Perhaps the most intriguing detail comes from a letter he wrote years later to a friend in France, mentioning the incident almost offhandedly. "I have seen many strange things in my life, but nothing that chilled me quite like that night in America." For a man who'd witnessed revolutions, coronations, and the collapse of empires, that's a telling statement. Whether it was a trick of the light, a psychological quirk, or something far stranger, one thing is certain: the Jersey Devil's legend had sunk its claws into even the most unlikely of witnesses. And if a former king could be rattled by what lurked in those woods, what does that say about the creature's power over the human imagination? January 1909 wasn't just another winter in New Jersey. It was the week the Jersey Devil stopped being a local legend and became a full-blown nightmare gripping the entire state. It started quietly on the night of January 16th, when a postal worker in Woodbury swore he saw something swoop low over the rooftops, its wingspan casting a shadow across the moon. By dawn, his story had spread, and then the sightings exploded like wildfire. Dozens, then hundreds of people across South Jersey reported encounters over the next 7 days, each more frantic than the last. A trolley car full of passengers in Camden screamed as a clawed creature landed on the tracks ahead, its eyes reflecting the headlamps before it vanished into the darkness. A fire brigade in Bristol, Pennsylvania, just across the river, claimed they shot at a flying beast circling their station, only for it to let out a laugh-like screech and disappear. The panic reached a fever pitch by midweek. Schools in Burlington and Gloucester counties shuttered, with parents refusing to let children play outside after teachers reported eerie scratches on classroom windows. Factories and shops closed early as workers fled home before dusk, convinced something was hunting from the skies. Newspapers ran sensational headlines like "Devil Loose in Jersey" and "Winged Terror Stalks the Night," printing breathless testimonials from police officers, housewives, and even a minister who swore he'd seen the creature perched on his church steeple, hunched like a gargoyle come to life. Then came the armed posses. Farmers formed search parties with rifles and lanterns, determined to rid the region of the menace once and for all. One group in Haddon Heights claimed to corner the beast in a barn, only for it to burst through the roof in a shower of splinters, leaving behind nothing but sulphurous stench and hoofprints in the snow. The Philadelphia Zoo even offered a $10,000 reward for its capture, dead or alive, while skeptics dismissed the frenzy as mass hysteria fueled by the frigid winter air and overactive imaginations. But what makes the 1909 panic so fascinating isn't just the sheer volume of sightings, it's the chilling consistency in descriptions. From socialites in Atlantic City to dockworkers in Philadelphia, people reported the same unnatural features: a horse-like face, leathery wings, and a piercing cry that sounded almost human. Even more unsettling, the aftermath. Trappers found strange, unidentifiable tracks in the snow, forming patterns that vanished abruptly, as if the creature had taken flight. Livestock turned up drained of blood, with no clear predator to blame. And long after the headlines faded, whispers lingered in the Pine Barrens, where locals insisted the devil hadn't left. It had simply gone back to hiding, waiting for the next moment to remind the world it was still there. Was it mass delusion, a case of collective fear twisting ordinary animals into monsters? Or was there something else at work that January, something that left an entire region too terrified to sleep with their windows open? The 1909 panic didn't just prove how deeply the Jersey Devil had burrowed into the psyche of the people, it proved that sometimes the most terrifying legends refuse to stay in the past. Over the centuries, those who claim to have encountered the Jersey Devil describe eerily similar details, as if they've all glimpsed the same nightmare. The most consistent feature, those bat-like wings, often reported with a wingspan stretching 10 feet or more, leathery and veined, casting unnatural shadows even on moonless nights. Witnesses speak of the way they move not like a bird's steady flap, but something jagged and erratic, as if the creature fights the air itself to stay aloft. Then there's the head, almost always compared to a horse or goat, with elongated features, sunken eyes that burn red or yellow, and a mouth lined with needle-like teeth. But what chills most listeners aren't the visuals, it's the sound, that scream. Not an animal's cry, but something closer to a human wail twisted into something unholy, a sound that lingers in the ears long after the thing has vanished. Now here's where it gets fascinating. Compare these traits to other infamous cryptids and you'll notice unsettling overlaps. Take the Mothman of West Virginia, another winged terror with glowing eyes and a knack for vanishing before witnesses can blink. But while Mothman sightings often precede disasters, the Jersey Devil seems content to haunt for haunting's sake, a persistent specter rather than an omen. Then there's the chupacabra, with its vampiric hunger for livestock blood and grotesque, almost reptilian appearance. Both share that otherworldly aura, but the devil stands apart with its eerie blend of equine and demonic features, as if someone stitched together pieces of nightmares and set them loose in the pine. Yet what truly sets the Jersey Devil apart isn't just its appearance, it's the way these descriptions have held firm across 3 centuries. A farmer in 1750 and a trucker in 2003 might live worlds apart, but their accounts line up like pages from the same horror story. Even skeptics pause at that consistency. Could mass hysteria really sustain the same hallucination for generations, or is there something about the Pine Barrens? The way the mist plays tricks at dusk, the way the wind moans through the cedars, that molds sightings into the same monstrous shape. Maybe the truth isn't just in the details, but in what they reveal about us. After all, every culture has its winged demons, its cursed hybrids. The Jersey Devil might just be ours, a mirror held up to the darkest corners of the American wilderness, showing us what we fear most when the lights go out. Of course, not every strange shape in the Pine Barrens belongs to a supernatural entity. Science offers several plausible explanations for the Jersey Devil phenomenon, starting with the most straightforward: misidentification. Take sandhill cranes, for example. These large, prehistoric-looking birds stand nearly 4 feet tall with wingspans stretching over 6 feet. When startled, their flight can appear ungainly, their long legs trailing awkwardly behind them. In low light, with their reddish foreheads catching the glow of a setting sun, it's not hard to see how a panicked witness might mistake one for something far more sinister. Then there's the barred owl, whose shriek has been compared to a woman's scream, a sound that could easily send chills down the spine of anyone alone in the woods after dark. But misidentification only accounts for some sightings. Another compelling theory points to mass hysteria, especially during events like the 1909 panic. Psychologists note how fear can spread through communities like a contagion, warping perceptions. One person's nervous account of a shadowy figure becomes another's detailed encounter with a winged demon, fueled by regional folklore that primes people to expect the extraordinary. The human brain is wired to find patterns. Even where none exist, a rustle in the bushes becomes claws. A distant coyote's howl morphs into something unearthly. The Pine Barrens, with their isolating silence and eerie landscape, create the perfect petri dish for such collective delusions. Hoaxes, too, have played their part. In the early 20th century, carnival promoters and newspapermen weren't above stitching together grotesque taxidermy creatures to drum up tourism or sell papers. Even today, the internet teems with doctored photos and staged videos claiming to capture the devil on film. Yet while hoaxes explain some modern evidence, they don't account for the centuries of consistent reports from otherwise credible witnesses: colonial farmers, Quaker settlers, even trained observers like Joseph Bonaparte. Perhaps the most intriguing scientific angle involves the land itself. The Pine Barrens sit atop massive iron deposits that can distort compasses, and some theorize might generate subtle electromagnetic fields. Could these natural anomalies affect human perception, inducing brief hallucinations or a creeping sense of unease? Combine that with the region's infamous ghost lights, a mysterious glowing orbs blamed on swamp gas, and you have a landscape practically designed to breed superstition. Here's the thing: folklore doesn't exist in a vacuum. It grows in the gaps between what we know and what we fear. The Jersey Devil isn't just a creature. It's a story shaped by generations of whispered warnings, sightings skewed by adrenaline, and the universal human need to explain the unexplainable. That doesn't make the encounters any less real to those who have lived them, but it does remind us that sometimes the most enduring mysteries aren't about what's lurking in the woods, but what's lurking in the shadows of our own minds. The Pine Barrens aren't just the setting for the Jersey Devil legend, they're practically a character in the story themselves. This sprawling wilderness, covering over 1 million acres of southern New Jersey, is a landscape unlike any other in the region. Picture this: a labyrinth of stunted pitch pines twisting skyward from sandy soil, their gnarled branches forming a canopy so dense it blots out the sun in places. Beneath them, tea-colored water seeps through cranberry bogs and cedar swamps, staining the streams the color of rust. The air hangs heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine resin, and on still nights, the only sounds are the distant hoot of an owl or the unsettling creak of trees swaying in the wind. It's the kind of place where your flashlight beam seems to vanish into the darkness after just a few feet, where shadows move just a second too late to be natural. This eerie isolation isn't just for dramatic effect, it's baked into the very soil. The Pine Barrens sit atop a massive, acidic aquifer that makes the water undrinkable without treatment, earning the area its name from early settlers who deemed it barren for farming. But what made the land inhospitable to colonists created the perfect sanctuary for wildlife. And perhaps something else. The same sandy soil that repelled permanent settlements also preserves footprints with unsettling clarity. explaining generations of reports about strange, three-toed tracks appearing overnight. Those blackwater streams, they're so stained with tannins that anything swimming beneath the surface becomes a distorted shadow, turning an ordinary otter into a sinuous mystery with just a trick of the light. And then there's the wildlife itself. While the Jersey Devil might be fiction, the Pine Barrens host creatures strange enough to fuel centuries of speculation. Take the bog turtle, North America's smallest turtle, a rare, secretive reptile with a dark shell and vibrant orange markings that looks positively prehistoric when glimpsed moving through the mist. Or the timber rattlesnake, a thick-bodied predator that can grow over 5 feet long, its mottled pattern making it nearly invisible in the dappled forest light until it's dangerously close. Even the region's birds add to the uncanny atmosphere, like the whip-poor-will, whose repetitive nighttime call sounds eerily like its name, or the barred owl's sudden, shriek-like hoots that could easily be mistaken for something more sinister. But here's what truly makes the Pine Barrens a breeding ground for legends. They don't give up their secrets easily. The same sandy soil that preserves tracks also swallows sounds, creating zones of unnatural silence where voices carry just a few feet before being absorbed. The dense underbrush masks movement until you're practically on top of it. A deer bursting from cover can feel like an ambush, let alone something larger. And then there's the infamous Pine Barrens phenomenon, where even experienced hunters and hikers report losing all sense of direction, as if the woods themselves are shifting around them. When you combine these elements with generations of folklore priming people to expect the extraordinary, is it any wonder that shadows take on lives of their own? Perhaps the most telling detail lies in the name locals gave one particularly treacherous section, the Devil's Tub. This sunken, swampy area seems to repel compass needles and disorient even GPS devices, with veteran outdoorsmen telling stories of wandering in circles for hours just a stone's throw from marked trails. If the land itself feels alive, even hostile at times, how could stories of something more not take root? The Pine Barrens don't just hide things, they seem to invite mystery, cradling every eerie encounter and unsettling sound until they grow into something larger than life. After enough time under those twisted pines, listening to the wind howl through the branches, even the most skeptical visitor might start to wonder, are we truly alone out here? Or has something been watching us all along, waiting patiently in the places the light never reaches? The line between folklore and reality blurs when we trace the origins of the Jersey Devil back to the Leeds family. Historians have spent decades combing through colonial records, and here's what they've uncovered. There really was a Leeds family in the Pine Barrens during the early 18th century. Daniel Leeds, a prominent landowner and publisher, settled in the area long before the legend took hold. But here's where things get complicated. While Mother Leeds' cursed birth story dominates the tale, no historical evidence actually links her to Daniel's family. In fact, the name Leeds Devil seems to have emerged long after the family's influence waned, borrowed from their controversial reputation rather than any confirmed tragedy. Daniel Leeds himself was no stranger to scandal. His almanacs, filled with astrological predictions, clashed with the rigid Quaker values of the time, earning him accusations of witchcraft and devil worship. His later writings even referenced biblical demons, fueling whispers that he dabbled in the occult. By the time his son Titan took over the family business, their surname had become shorthand for heresy in some circles. Could these rumors have planted the seeds for the Jersey Devil myth? It's plausible. When people spoke of the Leeds Devil in hushed tones, they might not have been referring to a creature at all, but to the family's tarnished legacy, twisted over generations into something supernatural. Yet tragedy did strike the Pine Barrens in ways that could have fed the legend. Colonial records from Burlington County document a series of stillbirths and infant deaths in the 1700s, often attributed to malign influences or unnatural causes. One particularly grim entry from 1735 describes a child born with severe deformities, a condition likely caused by genetic disorders or environmental toxins, but in an era steeped in superstition, easily framed as a curse. Another account tells of a reclusive woman, possibly suffering from mental illness, who wandered the woods muttering about her child's return. These fragments don't prove the existence of a devil, but they reveal how real suffering could warp into something monstrous in the collective imagination. The legend's most enduring twist, the 13 children, adds another layer. Large families were common in colonial America, but infant mortality was tragically high. A mother losing her 13th child might have been reality for some, and the leap from grief-stricken despair to a curse isn't hard to imagine. Folklorists point to European parallels like the German, Wetzelkind tales of changelings, where a monstrous replacement is left in a human child's cradle. The Leeds story echoes this, but with a uniquely American grimness, a mother's anguish transforming into something that never dies, forever bound to the land that witnessed her pain. So where does that leave us? The Leeds family existed, their reputation was shadowed by controversy, and the Pine Barrens were no stranger to hardship. The Jersey Devil might not be a literal winged creature, but it's far more than just a campfire story. It's a patchwork of history and fear, stitched together by generations of whispers. When the wind howls through those pines tonight, it carries not just the legend but the echoes of real people, real tragedies, and the human need to make sense of the darkness by giving it a name. Long before the Jersey Devil haunted modern screens, it was already a star of the traveling carnival circuit. By the late 1800s, sideshow barkers across America were peddling authentic devil relics, twisted bones in formaldehyde, scraps of wing membrane that turned out to be dried bat skins, even fake photographs retouched to show a blurry specter looming over the pine. One particularly brazen attraction in Atlantic City claimed to have the creature itself, locked in a cage beneath a circus tent. Patrons who paid an extra nickel would be led through a pitch-black corridor, only to recoil as a hidden air blast mimicked wings flapping past their faces while a hidden phonograph played that infamous scream. The gimmick was pure theater, but the fear was real. Hollywood soon took notice. The 1933 horror film The Devil Bat, starring Bela Lugosi, borrowed heavily from Jersey Devil lore, featuring a winged monster terrorizing a rural community. Though never explicitly named, the parallels were unmistakable right down to the creature's origins in a scientific experiment gone wrong, echoing the Leeds family curse. Comic books of the 1950s and 60s frequently included the devil in anthology series like Tales from the Crypt, often depicting it as a vengeful spirit punishing those who trespassed in its domain. But the legend truly entered mainstream consciousness with a single episode of The X-Files in 1995. Titled The Jersey Devil, the installment followed Mulder and Scully tracking a feral, cannibalistic humanoid through, of all places, the woods of New Jersey. While the show took liberties with the lore, relocating the creature to the fictional Galloway Woods, it cemented the devil's reputation as more than regional folklore. Suddenly, cryptid hunters nationwide were poring over Pine Barrens maps, and late-night radio shows buzzed with fresh encounter calls. Video games and heavy metal bands soon followed suit. The Fallout series featured mutated Jersey Devils as enemies, their leathery wings and glowing eyes paying homage to the original. Rock bands like the Misfits and Cradle of Filth penned songs casting the creature as both predator and tragic figure, a damned soul forever hunted by those who fear it. Even children's media couldn't resist. Scooby-Doo episodes and Goosebumps books offered watered-down versions, introducing new generations to the myth. Yet for all its pop culture reinventions, the Jersey Devil's most fascinating role might be as a mirror for societal fears. In the 1950s, comic book versions often reflected Cold War paranoia, with the devil portrayed as an atomic mutation. The X-Files episode tapped into 90s anxieties about urban sprawl encroaching on wild places. Today, streaming documentaries frame it as an allegory for ecological destruction, the idea that disturbing ancient landscapes might awaken something best left alone. What makes this creature endure isn't just its terrifying appearance, but its adaptability. Unlike static monsters like Dracula or Frankenstein's creation, the Jersey Devil evolves with each retelling, absorbing new fears and fascinations while keeping its core mystery intact. Every generation gets the devil it deserves, and perhaps the one it secretly wants, a reminder that some mysteries refuse to be solved, no matter how many spotlights we shine into those dark, whispering pines. Out in the Pine Barrens, where the trees grow dense and the roads wind like secrets, people don't just talk about the Jersey Devil, they live with it. For some locals, it's nothing more than a tall tale, a story to sell t-shirts and draw visitors to roadside attractions. "Oh sure, the devil brings in the tourists," chuckles Bill, a grizzled diner owner in Chatsworth, flipping a burger on the grill. "You wanna see people jump? Tell him you heard screeching out by the old cranberry bogs last night. Half the folks'll be out there with cameras by sundown." He rolls his eyes, but there's a glint of amusement in them. The legend pays his bills even if he doesn't buy into it. Then there are those who treat it with uneasy respect. Marion, a third-generation blueberry farmer, won't dismiss the stories outright. "My granddaddy swore he saw something out by the fence line in 1968, said it wasn't no bear, wasn't no bird neither," she says, rubbing her arms as if the memory still chills her. "You spend enough nights out here when the fog rolls in, you stop being so quick to laugh things off." She keeps a shotgun by the back door just in case, though she'll never admit if it's for coyotes or something else. For a handful of others, the devil is more than folklore. It's a living, breathing part of the landscape. Take old Tom, a retired postman who spends his evenings sipping whiskey on his porch in Bass River. "Seen it myself back in '93, he insists, leaning forward with the gravity of a man who's told this story 100 times and means it every time. Wings like a tarp flapping in the wind, eyes like two damn headlights. You think I'm crazy? Go ask the Wilsons down the road. Their collie went missing that same week, and all that was left was a patch of fur, and this stink like rotten eggs." His neighbors nod along, not because they believe him, but because in the Pine Barrens you don't call a man a liar to his face, not when the night's so long and the woods so close. And then there are the true believers, the ones who have turned the legend into a quiet kind of faith. At the White Horse Inn, a group of regulars meets every Thursday to swap stories over pints of local ale. They've got maps marked with red X's where sightings occurred, blurry trail cam photos tucked into wallets like holy relics. "People think we're nuts," says a younger man named Derek who runs a paranormal blog in his spare time. "But you ever notice how the devil only shows up when things are about to go wrong? Storm coming, someone loses their job, it's like a warning." His friends don't all agree. Some think it's just an animal, some think it's something older, something that was here before the Lenape, but they all listen. Because out here, where the cell service dies and the streetlights end, it's easier to believe in monsters than in being truly alone. What's fascinating isn't just the range of belief, it's how the legend shapes the community itself. The annual Devil Hunt in Leeds Point draws hundreds, with vendors selling devil-shaped cookies and kids sporting glow-in-the-dark horns, the local high school's mascot. The Red Devils, of course, yet for all the laughter and commerce, there's an unspoken rule among residents. You can joke about the devil in daylight, but you don't mock it after dark. Because when the sun drops and the pine needles crunch underfoot with no one around to make the sound, even the biggest skeptics lock their doors a little quicker. The Jersey Devil might be myth, but the fear it stirs, that's as real as the soil under their boots. And in a place where the past clings like the damp, that's enough to keep the legend alive, not in the shadows, but in the spaces between what's said and what's left unsaid. Where myth meets modern technology, the Pine Barrens have become a magnet for paranormal investigators armed with gadgets promising to reveal the truth. Cryptozoologists and ghost hunters alike descend on the region, drawn by the possibility of capturing definitive proof of the Jersey Devil's existence. Thermal cameras sweep the tree line for unexplained heat signatures, while audio recorders run for hours, hoping to pick up those infamous hair-raising shrieks. Night vision lenses transform the woods into eerie green landscapes where every rustling branch becomes a potential sighting. Some of these investigations have yielded interesting results. In 2007, a team from a popular paranormal TV show claimed to capture a thermal image of something large and winged moving between the trees near Leeds Point. The footage, grainy and indistinct, shows a blur of heat darting across the screen before vanishing too fast for a bird, too quiet for a deer. Skeptics were quick to point out the area's abundance of bats and owls, but the investigators swore the object's size and speed defied any known local wildlife. Then there are the notorious EVP recordings electronic voice phenomena, where teams claim to have captured the devil's voice in empty stretches of forest. One clip played endlessly on paranormal forums features a guttural growl layered beneath static, followed by what sounds like a whispered phrase, "old bones." Chilling, absolutely. Conclusive, hardly. Audio experts note how wind through the pines, combined with equipment interference, can create phantom voices, especially when listeners are primed to expect them. Perhaps the most debated piece of evidence comes from a series of photographs taken near the Mullica River in the 1980s. A hiker's snapshot, developed weeks later, appeared to show a hunched, winged figure half hidden in the underbrush. The image spread like wildfire in tabloids and cryptid magazines until forensic analysts pointed out the telltale signs of a double exposure, likely caused by a glitch in the camera's shutter. But here's the thing, even debunked, these photos persist in devil lore, because when you're dealing with a legend this deep-rooted, facts don't always erase the shiver down your spine. For every team that leaves empty-handed, another arrives with upgraded gear and renewed determination. Drones now buzz over the treetops, scanning for anomalies with infrared and LiDAR. Some researchers set up motion-activated cameras along old logging roads, while others experiment with parabolic microphones to isolate distant sounds from the wind. Yet the devil, if it's out there, remains stubbornly elusive, always just beyond the edge of the frame or fading into static when the recording starts. This relentless pursuit raises a compelling question. What drives people to keep searching for something that, by all logic, shouldn't exist? Part of it is the thrill of the unknown, the chance to be the one who finally proves the skeptics wrong. But dig deeper and you'll find something more profound. The Jersey Devil isn't just a target for ghost hunters, it's a living link to the mystery of the Pine Barrens themselves. A reminder that even in our age of satellites and smartphones, some shadows refuse to be fully illuminated. And maybe that's exactly how the legend prefers it. Not every eerie footprint or grainy photograph in the Pine Barrens belongs to the Jersey Devil. Some are carefully crafted deceptions. One of the most infamous hoaxes unfolded in 1960, when a group of college students from Rutgers University decided to put the legend to the test. Using plaster casts and wooden tools, they sculpted a set of three-toed tracks along a deserted sand road near Bass River. The prints looked unnervingly real, with deep claw marks and an unnatural stride spacing. By morning, the local paper had snapped photos, and within days, national tabloids were running headlines like "Devil's Trail Found in Jersey." The pranksters eventually came clean, but not before their handiwork had sparked a fresh wave of panic and inspired countless imitators. Hoaxes like this aren't just about pulling a fast one on the public. They reveal something deeper about our relationship with legends. Take the case of the Leeds Devil exhibit at a 1932 traveling carnival. For 25 cents, attendees could peer into a dimly lit cage at a contorted figure covered in mangy fur, its glowing eyes flickering thanks to hidden bulbs. The creature was nothing more than a mangy bear carcass stitched with bat wings, but people left convinced they'd seen the real thing. Why? Because the myth had primed them to believe. The carnival's owner, a shrewd showman named Elias Hargrove, later admitted, "Folks don't want to see an empty cage, they want to walk away scared." Social media has taken this age-old game of deception and supercharged it. In 2016, a viral video claimed to show the Jersey Devil swooping over a backyard in Galloway. The footage, shaky and overexposed, depicted a blurry winged shape later revealed to be a drone draped in a tarp, its flight path carefully edited for maximum eeriness. Yet the video racked up millions of views before debunkers pointed out the telltale whir of propellers in the audio. Similar fabrications flood platforms like TikTok and YouTube, where filters and AI tools make it easier than ever to doctor evidence. A single convincing post can spawn dozens of copycat hoaxes, each one muddying the waters between folklore and fraud. But here's the twist: not all hoaxers are out for clout. Some see themselves as modern-day folklorists, keeping the legend alive through elaborate pranks. Consider the mysterious Devil's Nest discovered in 2019, a hollowed-out tree stump filled with animal bones and charred feathers arranged to look like a lair. The creators, who have never come forward, left no signs or claims of authenticity. For locals, it became a macabre tourist curiosity, blurring the line between art installation and psychological warfare. "It freaked people out because it felt too deliberate," said one park ranger. "Like someone knew exactly what our nightmares looked like. What drives this relentless cycle of trickery?" Part of its human nature, the thrill of fooling others, of holding power over their fears. Yet there's also a strange kind of love for the legend itself. By faking footprints or staging photos, hoaxers aren't just mocking believers, they're feeding the myth's immortality. After all, a story that can survive centuries of scrutiny, skepticism, and outright lies must contain a kernel of something irresistible. The Jersey Devil doesn't just haunt the Pine Barrens, it haunts our collective imagination, daring us to question what's real. And in an era where a single viral hoax can reboot the legend for a new generation, that's a power even the most elaborate prank can't fake. The Jersey Devil isn't alone in the world of monstrous legends. It's part of a much older, darker family. Take Scotland's kelpie, for example. This shape-shifting water horse lurks in lochs, its hide cold and slippery as it drags unwary travelers beneath the waves. Like the Jersey Devil, it's a hybrid creature, part horse and part something unnatural, with a scream that freezes the blood. Then there's Australia's bunyip, a swamp-dwelling nightmare with tusks and a bellowing roar, said to snatch children who wander too close to billabongs. Half a world apart, yet these creatures share eerie similarities. Twisted forms that defy nature, a taste for lonely places, and a habit of vanishing just when you think you've got them cornered. So why do cultures across continents keep inventing these same kinds of monsters? One answer lies in the landscapes themselves. The Pine Barrens, with their tangled undergrowth and whispering winds, aren't so different from Scotland's misty glens or Australia's sunken wetlands. These are liminal spaces, places where the rules feel suspended, where shadows move wrong, and where the human mind, faced with the unknown, reaches for familiar terrors. A rustle in the reeds becomes a bunyip, a splash in the loch transforms into a kelpie, and in New Jersey, a twisted pine branch in the moonlight might just be the devil's wing. But it's deeper than geography. These creatures often emerge from shared human fears of the dark, of the wild, of what might be watching from just beyond the firelight. The kelpie and the Jersey Devil both punish the reckless, the ones who stray too far from safety. The bunyip, like the devil, is a reminder that some places aren't meant for humans. Their cautionary tales dressed in scales and fur, warnings whispered across generations to keep children from wandering, to make hunters think twice before following a strange sound into the trees. There's another thread connecting these myths, the idea of the cursed or the transformed. The kelpie was once a human, trapped in its monstrous form by some forgotten sin. The bunyip in some Aboriginal traditions is a spirit of the drowned, and the Jersey Devil, born of a mother's curse, a child twisted by anger or despair. These aren't just monsters, they're tragedies frozen in folklore, reminders that the line between human and horror can be thin as a shadow. Perhaps that's why these legends endure. They give shape to the shapeless fears that live in all of us, the dread of what we might become, or what might be waiting in the dark. The Jersey Devil isn't just New Jersey's problem. It's part of a global chorus of nightmares, each one singing the same unsettling tune. You're not alone out there, and some things once seen can't be unseen. Among the tangled theories surrounding the Jersey Devil, few are as persistent or as provocative as the whispers of government involvement. The Pine Barrens' remote location and eerie silence have long made them an ideal canvas for conspiracy, with some alleging the creature isn't folklore at all, but the grotesque result of clandestine military experiments gone wrong. Rumors swirl about abandoned bunkers hidden beneath the pines, Cold War-era test sites where the U.S. Army might have tampered with things best left alone. One particularly chilling account from the 1950s involves a group of hunters who stumbled upon a concrete structure deep in the woods, its doors welded shut and walls marked with faded radiation symbols. When they reported it to local authorities, men in unmarked vehicles arrived within hours, cordoning off the area and dismissing questions with terse assurances of routine cleanup. The timing of certain sightings fuels these theories. The 1909 panic, for instance, coincided with early aviation experiments along the East Coast, leading some researchers to speculate whether misidentified prototypes or worse, escaped test subjects could explain the sudden surge in reports. Decades later, during the height of the Cold War, a cluster of encounters near the Warren Grove bombing range had locals whispering about biological weapons testing. Declassified documents from the era do confirm the military used parts of the Pine Barrens for training exercises, including low-altitude flight tests that could account for strange lights and noises. But what about the descriptions, the glowing eyes, the stench of sulfur, details that feel too specific for mere machinery? Then there's the curious case of the so-called silenced witnesses. In 2003, a retired Air Force mechanic named Carl Jarvis gave a deathbed interview to a local reporter, claiming he'd been part of a team sent to contain something in the Barrens back in 1976. He described a creature kept in a reinforced cage at a secured facility, its wounds treated by men in hazmat suits. It wasn't natural, he allegedly said. The way it looked at you like it knew things. The story might have been dismissed as delirium, except for one detail. Jarvis's service records confirmed he'd been stationed at Magaya Air Force Base during that period, assigned to an undisclosed Special Projects unit. Of course, skeptics point out the lack of tangible evidence, no leaked photos, no verifiable blueprints, but conspiracy theorists counter that absence is the point. If the government truly had something to hide, wouldn't they erase the paper trail? They point to strange patterns, how local police reports from major sighting years sometimes go missing, or how certain areas of the Barrens remain conspicuously off-limits to hikers under vague environmental hazard warnings. Even the infamous Devil's Tub, that unnavigable patch of land where compasses fail, has been cited as potential proof of electromagnetic interference from buried technology. The most compelling argument against these theories isn't lack of imagination, it's the sheer longevity of the legend. The Leeds family curse predates the Wright brothers, let alone secret military labs. Yet the overlap between modern conspiracy and ancient folklore raises an unsettling question. What if the truth isn't one or the other, but both? What if the Jersey Devil was always here and the experiments weren't creating something new, just disturbing something old? After all, the Pine Barrens have always kept their secrets, and in a world where governments declassify UFO files but still redact the juiciest details, maybe the real cover-up isn't about hiding monsters, Maybe it's about admitting they never had control in the first place. The Jersey Devil isn't just a creature, it's a mirror held up to centuries of human fear, reflecting back the anxieties of every era it's haunted. Colonial settlers saw in it the terror of the unknown, a manifestation of their dread toward the untamed wilderness they struggled to conquer. The Pine Barrens weren't just inconveniently barren, they were actively hostile, a place where crops failed, livestock died mysteriously, and compasses spun uselessly. What better symbol for that unease than a winged demon, a literal embodiment of the land's resistance to their control? The devil became the scapegoat for everything that went wrong: blighted harvests, vanished travelers, even the eerie silence that settled over the woods at night. It wasn't just a monster, it was a warning label slapped onto the entire landscape. Here there be danger, but as time passed, the legend evolved, absorbing new fears like a sponge. By the industrial age, the Jersey Devil began to represent something subtler: the cost of progress. The 19th century saw railroads slicing through the barrens, factories belching smoke near its edges, and loggers hacking down ancient trees. With each incursion into the wild, sightings spiked, as if the creature were a vengeful spirit rising to defend its home. Reports from this era often describe the devil not just as a predator, but as a spectator, watching from the tree line as smokestacks rose in the distance. Was it a coincidence that these encounters surged just as humans began altering the land on an unprecedented scale? Or was the myth adapting, becoming a folkloric protest against the idea that nature could be tamed without consequence? Fast forward to the modern era, and the devil takes on yet another role: the outsider, the thing that doesn't belong. In a post-war America obsessed with conformity, the creature became a symbol of the other, the unchecked, the unexplained, the wrong. Its very body, a patchwork of mismatched animal traits, reflected the era's fear of difference. Teenagers cruising through the barrens in the 1950s didn't just see a monster, they saw rebellion with wings, a thing that refused to be categorized or caged. Even today, in an age of climate anxiety, the devil resurfaces in debates about conservation, its legend repurposed as a cautionary tale. What happens when we push an ecosystem too far? Maybe the answer isn't a literal creature in the pines, but the unsettling idea that nature might just push back. And then there's the psychological layer, the devil as a manifestation of personal demons. The Leeds family curse, with its themes of shame and transformation, speaks to universal fears of inherited trauma, of sins visited upon children. The creature's scream, so often described as almost human, taps into something primal, the terror of losing oneself, of becoming monstrous under the weight of grief or rage. It's no accident that so many witnesses describe the devil's eyes as knowing, as if it recognizes something in them they'd rather keep hidden. In that sense, the legend isn't just about a monster in the woods. It's about the monsters we carry inside, the ones that might crawl out if we're not careful. So what does the Jersey Devil really represent? Maybe all of it: colonial dread, environmental guilt, societal paranoia, personal darkness. Myths like this endure not because they're simple, but because they're elastic, stretching to fit whatever fears we need them to hold. The Pine Barrens haven't changed much in 300 years. But the stories we tell about them, those shift with every generation, whispering the same uneasy truth. Sometimes the scariest thing in the dark isn't what's out there, it's what we bring with us. The Jersey Devil doesn't just haunt the Pine Barrens. It leaps from canvases, lurks in song lyrics, and even grins from coffee mugs. Artists have been captivated by the legend for generations, reimagining the creature in ways that range from bone-chilling to bizarrely whimsical. Take New Jersey painter Alexander Runciman's 18th century sketch, The Leeds Devil Ascendant, where the beast unfurls bat-like wings against a stormy sky, its goat-like face twisted in a snarl. Runciman wasn't just illustrating a folktale, he was channeling the colonial terror of the unknown, turning whispered fears into something you could see. That tension between horror and fascination still fuels creators today. modern artists take even bolder liberties. At the annual Jersey Devil Festival in Smithville, local sculptors carve towering wooden effigies of the creature, some with antlers like a stag, others with elongated, almost alien limbs. One standout piece from 2019 depicted the devil mid-transformation, half human and half monster, its mouth open in a silent scream that echoed the Leeds family curse. Then there's the viral cute Jersey Devil trend, where illustrators re-envision the beast as everything from a chubby, winged raccoon to a pastel plushie with glow-in-the-dark eyes. These playful takes might seem irreverent, but they're proof of the legend's elasticity, how a 300-year-old nightmare can soften into something you'd stick on a toddler's onesie. Music, too, bends the myth to its will. Heavy metal bands like the Devil's Assembly crank out tracks with guttural lyrics about hooves pounding on hollow ground, while folk singers like Pine Barrens' native Elena Vance spin quieter, eerie ballads. Her song Leeds Point Lullaby imagines the devil not as a predator, but a lonely outcast howling into the void, a twist that turns fear into empathy. Even pop culture gets in on the act. Remember the viral TikTok sea shanty, "Oh, Devil Mine." That jaunty earworm recast the creature as a lovelorn misfit pining for a human bride, complete with a synth-heavy chorus. Perhaps the most unexpected homage sits in a Philadelphia art gallery. A 10-foot-tall crocheted Jersey Devil, its wings stitched from vintage quilts. The artist Marisol Ruiz wanted to reclaim the monster as something tender, something handmade. It's a far cry from the bloodthirsty beast of legend, yet it taps into the same core idea that myths aren't static. They're clay, reshaped by each generation to reflect new fears, new jokes, even new hopes. From oil paintings to ironic memes, the Jersey Devil's artistic afterlife proves one thing: a legend this enduring doesn't belong to the past. It belongs to whoever picks up a brush, a chisel, or a microphone next. And in that way, the creature never really dies. It just changes form, soaring from the pines into 1,000 new imaginations, each version as real and as fleeting as a shadow in the trees. In the age of smartphones and high-definition cameras, you'd think the Jersey Devil would have nowhere left to hide. Yet the 21st century has brought a fresh wave of sightings, some easily debunked, others chillingly hard to dismiss. Take the case of a group of hikers in 2012, filming a documentary about the Pine Barrens ecology near Wharton State Forest. Their footage, later uploaded to YouTube, shows a serene landscape until a guttural screech pierces the audio, sending birds scattering. The camera jerks upward, capturing a blur of movement between the trees, something dark, too large for a deer, with a hunched posture that doesn't match any known local animal. The video's comment section erupted with theories, from escaped exotic pets to CGI hoaxes, but forensic audio analysts noted something peculiar. The scream's frequency didn't match any known wildlife in the region, not even the notoriously eerie cries of foxes or bobcats. Dashcam footage from 2018 further stoked debate. A trucker hauling cranberries along Route 542 near Chatsworth caught a shadowy figure sprinting across the road at 3 a.m., not on two legs but with an odd loping gait. The thermal imaging from his upgraded dashcam showed a heat signature unlike a human or deer, with an elongated torso and what appeared to be trailing, wing-like appendages. Skeptics argued it could have been a disoriented black bear, but wildlife experts pointed out that bears rarely move at that speed unless panicked, and the shape's proportions were all wrong. The video's most unsettling detail: the moment the figure pauses mid-stride, turning its head toward the camera before vanishing into the underbrush. Freeze frames of that split second reveal two pinpricks of light where eyes might be too reflective for an animal, too deliberate to dismiss as glare. Why do these sightings persist, even in an era where every glitch can be magnified and dissected online? Part of it's the democratization of myth-making. With social media, anyone can share their encounter instantly, bypassing the gatekeepers of traditional folklore. A shaky cell phone video from a startled camper might go viral overnight, reigniting debates that once belonged to dusty newspaper clippings. But there's another, darker factor: the Pine Barrens themselves. Despite satellite mapping and GPS, vast stretches remain untracked by trails, their dense foliage swallowing signals and sound alike. Modern technology hasn't tamed this landscape, it's just given us new ways to document how little we still understand it. Not all digital age devil claims hold up under scrutiny, of course. A 2020 TikTok trend saw teens staging finds like fake bones and claw marks on trees, while a notorious 2015 hoax involved a drone disguised with faux fur and LEDs soaring over a Halloween party. Yet even debunked cases feed the legend, reinforcing the idea that the Pine Barrens are a place where reality blurs. The most compelling recent accounts share an eerie consistency: descriptions of a stench like rotting sulfur, sounds that defy natural explanation, and a lingering sense of being watched long after the camera stops rolling. Perhaps the most telling detail comes from the researchers who braved the Barrens with night vision gear and motion sensors. Many admit they've caught anomalies, unidentified thermal blips, audio spikes with no visible source, but refuse to label them as evidence of the devil. Because in the end, the mystery isn't just about proving or disproving a monster. It's about why, in a world where we can map the ocean floor and track asteroids, a patch of New Jersey wilderness still holds secrets we can't quite capture, no matter how many pixels we throw at them. The human mind is a pattern-seeking machine wired to fill in the gaps when faced with the unknown. It's why we see faces in clouds, hear whispers in static, and sometimes spot monsters where there are only shadows. The Jersey Devil's enduring legend isn't just about what's lurking in the Pine Barrens, it's about what's lurking in our own psychology. Take confirmation bias, for example. Once you've heard the tale of a winged creature haunting the pines, every rustle in the underbrush becomes a potential sighting. A distant owl's call twists into that infamous shriek. A deer's eyes reflecting flashlight beams, suddenly they're the devil's glowing stare. Our brains cling to details that match the story we know while dismissing anything that doesn't fit. A hiker might brush off 99 strange sounds as wind or wildlife, but the 100th, the one that makes their pulse race, gets filed under proof. Then there's the power of suggestion. In 1978, a psychology student at Rutgers ran an experiment, planting fake three-toed tracks near a popular hiking trail. Within days, reports of devil sightings flooded local papers despite the tracks being made with a carved piece of plywood. When interviewed, witnesses swore they'd seen everything from red eyes in the trees to wings blotting out the moon. None of them had encountered anything supernatural, but the mere hint of the legend altered their perceptions, turning mundane sights into something monstrous. This phenomenon isn't unique to New Jersey. From Scotland's Loch Ness to West Virginia's Mothman, cryptid sightings often cluster after media coverage or a high-profile claim, as if fear itself is contagious. But psychology digs deeper than just misperception. The Jersey Devil also taps into something primal: our innate fear of the wild. The Pine Barrens, with their tangled trails and eerie silences, trigger what anthropologists call the uncanny valley of landscapes. It's a place that feels almost familiar, yet just wrong enough to unsettle. Add isolation, low light, and the brain's tendency to heighten senses in perceived danger, and you've got a recipe for phantom monsters. Sleep deprivation amplifies this effect. Many encounters occur late at night or in pre-dawn hours, when the mind is already teetering between reality and dream logic. A Rutgers sleep study in 2015 found that subjects exposed to Jersey Devil stories before bed were far more likely to interpret ambiguous nighttime sounds as threats, proof that fear doesn't just live in the woods. It lives in the space between our ears. Yet dismissing every sighting as mere psychology misses a crucial point. For some, believing isn't about evidence, it's about identity. The devil isn't just a creature, it's a piece of local heritage, a story passed down through generations like a family heirloom. To call it just a legend can feel like erasure, especially in a world where concrete and Wi-Fi towers keep swallowing the wild places. The mind might conjure the devil from shadows, but the heart keeps it alive long after the shadows fade. In the end, the Jersey Devil's greatest trick isn't hiding in the pines. It's making us wonder, even for a second, if we're the ones who stopped seeing what's really there. From ghost tours to souvenir shops, the Jersey Devil isn't just a legend, it's a full-blown economic engine for the Pine Barrens. Local businesses rake in millions annually from devil-themed merchandise alone. Hand-carved wooden figures selling for $50 a piece at roadside stands, faded black T-shirts with screaming red-eyed logos flying off racks, and even artisanal Devil's Claw hot sauce bottled in nearby Hammonton, its label featuring a cartoonish winged menace. The tourism bump is undeniable. Each October, towns like Smithville and Leeds Point see hotel bookings surge as paranormal enthusiasts flock to Devil Fest, a month-long celebration featuring hayrides through haunted groves, storytelling nights under the pines, and craft vendors hawking everything from hand-painted devil mugs to knitted cryptid plushies. For many small businesses, this seasonal boom isn't just fun, it's survival, padding thin profit margins through the quiet winter months, but the financial impact runs deeper than kitsch. Guided tours have become a year-round cottage industry, with operators like Pine Barrens Mysteries offering nighttime hikes equipped with EMF meters and infrared cameras for $90 a head. Their 6-passenger vans run nightly, often booked solid weeks in advance by curious tourists hoping for a glimpse of glowing eyes in the underbrush. Even historical sites have leaned into the lore. The Batstow Village, a preserved 19th-century ironworks community, now hosts devil and history walking tours, blending genuine archival tales with staged encounters near abandoned cottages, a clever mashup that's doubled their visitor numbers since 2018. The economic spillover is measurable. Gas stations near trailheads report 30% spikes in snack and drink sales on tour nights, while diners along Route 542 add late-night Devil Burger specials to feed returning cryptid hunters. Not everyone sees the legend as a boon, though. Conservation groups worry the surge in foot traffic is stressing fragile ecosystems. The same sandy soil that preserves eerie footprints also erodes easily under heavy boots, and rare plants like the Pine Barrens gentian have been trampled by overeager hikers veering off marked paths. Some locals resent the commercialization, like retired teacher Martha Vale, whose family has lived in the Barrens for generations. "It used to be about respect," she told a reporter last fall. Now people treat these woods like some cheap haunted house, leaving beer cans and fake devil nests made of chicken bones tied with twine. The tension mirrors debates in places like Loch Ness, where myth collides with environmental reality. Then there's the branding dilemma. While the devil draws crowds, it also risks pigeonholing the region. Pinelands preservationists have fought for decades to highlight the area's ecological wonders: carnivorous sundews, pygmy pines, and tea-colored streams teeming with rare amphibians. But as one frustrated biologist put it, try finding funding to study bog turtles when every grant committee just asks if you've seen the Jersey Devil. The legend's shadow looms large, sometimes overshadowing legitimate conservation efforts. Even tourism campaigns walk a tightrope. The state's Visit NJ website dedicates an entire subsection to devil lore, while its page on the Barrens' globally unique flora gets half the thumbnail space. Yet for all the complications, the numbers don't lie. A 2022 Rutgers study estimated the legend generates between $12 and $15 million annually in direct and indirect revenue. That includes everything from the packed parking lots at White's Bogs during Devil Week to the surge in Airbnb bookings from podcasters hunting for authentic encounters. The myth has even spawned niche industries like Vineland-based Hex Security, which sells cryptid deterrent motion lights to nervous homeowners near the Barrens. Their top seller, a model with bat-wing silhouettes that cast eerie shadows when triggered, proof that even skepticism can turn a profit. Perhaps the most telling sign of the devil's economic staying power sits in a Trenton warehouse. Pallets of embroidered patches destined for Air Force bases worldwide, each depicting a grinning, winged caricature beside the phrase, "What the Pine." It's the unofficial mascot of the New Jersey Air National Guard's 177th Fighter Wing, a nod to the legend's grip on local pride. From high school mascots to military morale, the Jersey Devil has transcended folklore to become something more, a cultural export with real monetary teeth. Whether that's good for the Barrens depends on who you ask, but one thing's certain: as long as the myth keeps wallets opening, those eerie red eyes aren't blinking out anytime soon. Even the most terrifying legends get a bedtime story makeover when they reach younger audiences. The Jersey Devil is no exception, shredding its claws down to rounded nubs and swapping its blood-curdling scream for something closer to a playful giggle in children's picture books. Take The Little Jersey Devil by Amy Ignatow, where the creature is reimagined as a lonely outcast with oversized puppy dog eyes, just looking for friends in the Pine Barrens. Instead of cursed origins, this version plays up misunderstood charm, turning the devil into a mascot for embracing differences, the scariest thing about him. His habit of sneaking blueberries from farmers' baskets hardly the stuff of nightmares. Campfire stories for kids often follow the same gentle formula. Guides at the Pinelands Adventures summer camps spin tales where the devil isn't a predator, but a prankster tangling fishing lines, hiding left shoes, or howling to scare off bullies. These adaptations aren't just about softening horror, they're teaching tools. The monster becomes a metaphor for overcoming fears or respecting nature, with endings where the devil helps lost hikers or protects baby animals. It's folklore with training wheels, stripping away the Leeds family's tragedy and leaving behind a creature more akin to a woodland Scooby-Doo villain. Yet even these sanitized versions keep one foot in the original myth. Many children's books retain the devil's winged silhouette and Pine Barren setting, seeding early familiarity with the landscape's eerie reputation. A popular series called Devil's ABCs uses alliterative rhymes to introduce local wildlife. D is for devil, darting through the trees. E is for egret, elegant in the breeze, subtly anchoring the legend to real ecology. Others frame encounters as puzzles to solve, like Where's Winged Willie, a Where's Waldo knockoff that has kids searching for a grinning cartoon devil hidden among cranberry bogs and cedar swamps. The shift isn't just about content, it's about cultural initiation. These stories act as gateway folklore, giving kids just enough thrill to make them shiver without sleepless nights. By the time they're old enough for the darker, grittier versions, the Jersey Devil already feels like an old, if mischievous, acquaintance, and maybe that's the point. Legends don't survive by scaring every generation anew. They survive by letting each generation discover them on their own terms, starting with bedtime stories where the monster always lets you get away. For every spine-tingling encounter in the Pine Barrens, there are scientific explanations that pull the legend back down to earth. Zoologists have long pointed to the region's natural inhabitants as probable culprits for many supposed devil sightings. Take the great horned owl, a nocturnal predator with a 5-foot wingspan and ear tufts that resemble horns. When startled, its flight can appear erratic, and its piercing screech, often described as a woman's scream, matches countless chilling accounts. Then there's the sandhill crane, a towering bird with a wingspan over 6 feet. Seen in low light, its silhouette could easily be mistaken for something more sinister, especially when its elongated legs trail behind it mid-flight. Even common deer, when startled or injured, can bolt with an oddly upright gait, their eyes reflecting light in ways that distort perception. But the debunking goes deeper than misidentified wildlife. Forensic linguists have dissected centuries of eyewitness testimonies, uncovering patterns that hint at collective exaggeration. Early accounts from the 1700s describe the creature as more of a spectral apparition, while 19th century reports suddenly emphasize bat-like wings, coinciding with the rise of Gothic literature and penny dreadfuls that popularized winged demons. By the 20th century, descriptions standardized around the now familiar goat-headed hybrid, a shift that aligns neatly with the spread of illustrated newspapers and horror films. This evolution suggests the legend isn't just being passed down, it's being unconsciously refined by pop culture. Then there's the matter of physics. The Jersey Devil's alleged wingspan, often reported at 10 feet or more, presents a biological paradox. Aerodynamic studies show that a creature with such proportions would need disproportionately massive chest muscles to achieve flight, something no eyewitness has ever described. Even the largest flying birds, like condors, max out around 11 feet and require thermal updrafts to stay aloft for long. The Pine Barrens, with their dense canopy and limited open spaces, offer few such currents. And what about those infamous three-toed tracks? Wildlife experts note that herons and other wading birds leave similar impressions in soft mud, their elongated toes splaying in ways that can look unnervingly claw-like when preserved. Perhaps the most damning evidence lies in the silence of technology. In an era where trail cameras blanket the woods and smartphones record every unusual shadow, the absence of clear, verifiable footage speaks volumes. Most modern evidence relies on blurry shots or manipulated audio, easy to fake, impossible to authenticate. Even the infamous 1909 panic, with its hundreds of sightings, produced no physical traces beyond footprints later linked to pranksters. No bones, no feathers, no nests, just stories swirling like the Baron's own ghost lights, bright and fleeting. Yet for all the logic stacked against it, the legend endures, not because it defies debunking, but because it defies the need to be debunked at all. The Jersey Devil lives in the space between what we know and what we feel when the pines go quiet, and sometimes that's territory science can't quite map. The Jersey Devil isn't just a story, it's a living echo of the oldest fear humanity knows, the fear of the wild. Long before cities and streetlights, before maps and GPS, the darkness beyond the firelight was a place of teeth and shadows. The Pine Barrens, with their gnarled trees and whispering winds, are one of the last places on the East Coast where that ancient dread still feels warranted. There's something primal about the way the legend persists, as if the creature isn't just a monster, but a manifestation of the land itself, a reminder that some places refuse to be tamed. Consider how the story thrives in the modern age, a time when satellites can zoom in on every inch of the planet. We've mapped the ocean floor, photographed distant galaxies, yet the Pine Barrens remain stubbornly opaque, their secrets guarded by thickets and silence. The Jersey Devil endures because it fills that gap between what we can explain and what we can't. It's not just about the thrill of the unknown, it's about the discomfort of realizing how much unknown still exists even in our own backyards. Every hiker who's felt the hairs on their neck rise in those woods, every driver who's caught a flicker of movement in their headlights, they're touching something older than logic. A fear that predates folklore, wired into our bones, yet the legend's power isn't just in its horror, it's in its adaptability. The Jersey Devil isn't frozen in the past, it evolves with us. For colonial settlers, it was a cautionary tale about the dangers of the wilderness. For the industrial age, it became a symbol of nature's revenge, rising against railroads and sawmills. Today, it's a metaphor for everything from environmental anxiety to societal alienation, a blank canvas for whatever fears haunt the current moment. That malleability is why it lingers in classrooms and memes alike, why a creature born from 18th century superstition can still trend on TikTok. And then there's the role of place. The Pine Barrens aren't just a setting, they're a character in the story, a landscape so eerily timeless it feels like stepping into another world. Unlike urban legends tied to specific buildings or roads, the devil's domain is vast and borderless, a wilderness that resists mapping. That ambiguity feeds the myth. There's no haunted house to demolish, no cursed bridge to avoid, just miles of untamed land where anything could be hiding. The Barrens don't just host the legend, they sustain it, their very geography making disbelief feel like arrogance. Perhaps the most revealing aspect of the devil's legacy is how it thrives in contradiction. Skeptics mock it, scientists debunk it, yet the sightings continue. Not because people are gullible, but because the world feels richer with mysteries left unsolved. The Jersey Devil isn't just a cryptid, it's a covenant between the land and those who walk it, a shared agreement that some questions are better left unanswered. In a culture obsessed with demystifying everything, the legend endures as a rare, sacred space for wonder, and for the delicious, spine-tingling fear that comes with admitting we don't have all the answers. Maybe we don't want them. From shadowy folklore to blockbuster movies, the Jersey Devil has taken on countless forms over 3 centuries, yet at its core, it remains as elusive as the mist clinging to the Pine Barrens at dawn. We've traced its roots from Lenape warnings of the messing war to colonial whispers of Mother Leeds' cursed child, from the mass hysteria of 1909 to the digital age hoaxes that keep the legend twitching with life. It's been a cautionary tale, a sideshow attraction, an ecological metaphor, and even a plush toy. But here's the real mystery. Why does this particular creature, out of all America's cryptids, refuse to fade into obscurity? Consider the contradictions. The devil is ancient yet ever-changing, a nightmare stitched together from the fears of each new generation. It's been spotted by kings and farmers, cops and kids, yet leaves no bones behind. It's inspired both horror and humor, from Bela Lugosi's snarling monster to a cuddly mascot stitching cranberries onto a high school jersey. The legend thrives in the space between belief and skepticism, where a footprint in the sand could be a heron's or something far stranger. Science offers explanations, sure. Mass hysteria, misidentified owls, the tricks of light and shadow in a forest that plays with perception. But science can't account for the chill that lingers when you stand alone in those woods at dusk, feeling the weight of centuries of stories pressing in. It can't explain why, in an era of satellites and sensors, we still crave the thrill of the unexplained. Maybe the truth isn't about proving or disproving the devil's existence, but understanding why we keep resurrecting it. So let's ask the real question lurking behind all those glowing eyes and leathery wings. Does it matter whether the Jersey Devil is real? In a way, it already is. It's real in the way it shapes communities, in the way it draws thousands to festivals and hikes, in the way it reminds us that some landscapes resist our understanding. The Pine Barrens don't give up their secrets easily, and perhaps that's the point. The legend isn't just about a monster, it's about the enduring power of place, the stories we tell to make sense of the wild, and the tantalizing possibility that some mysteries are better left unsolved. Here's the final twist: the truth might be stranger than any fiction, because whether the Jersey Devil is flesh and blood or pure imagination, it's already done the impossible. It's turned a patch of New Jersey wilderness into a place where history, folklore, and modern curiosity collide, where every rustle in the pines could be the wind or something watching us back. And in the end, isn't that the most haunting idea of all? Not that monsters might exist, but that we'll never stop wondering if they do.